everyone. Today we're going to take a look at assessing student learning in the disciplines. This was chapter 10 of our reading. So this is just an overview of key concepts. Again, we're focusing on assessment, such as formative and summative assessments, and what makes authentic assessments, as well as grading practices. And then this quote over here in the corner: if assessment is to be a positive force in education, it must be properly implemented. It cannot be used to merely sort students or criticize education. Rather than teach to the test, we must test what we teach. So that is a great summarization for basically this whole chapter. So some challenges associated with assessment. What is being assessed changes, that can be a challenge, as well as when we're shifting instruction from just like recall and rote memorization to active engagement and students making deeper connections, our assessments must also change from just like simple rote memorization to being reflective of students having that deeper connection with the material. Another challenge is teachers being overwhelmed with data and not having enough time to analyze their results in order to make changes to their instruction. Of course, we know as teachers, time is of the essence, and we do not have enough of it generally. And another challenge is superficial learning without mastery due to demands teachers have to cover all the material. That relates to the issue with trying to teach to the test or cover all of the standards that we are expected to cover in the time that we have with our students. So this is a chart of formative versus summative assessments. I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with these assessments by this point in time. So formative being before or during instruction to help us see how students are processing the information and material right then and there, and it helps us guide planning and improve our instruction. Where summative is like the end of a unit or end of instruction and shows us what students know and have attained throughout our teaching. So, standardized tests. Again, you probably are familiar with this by now, but a standardized test is a test that is administered and scored in a standard manner. It does not provide information about individual student strengths, their skills, the amount of information that they know, and along with that, a criticism is that they only show what that student knows at that point in time. It's just like a one and done thing. It doesn't show their growth or anything like that. But its purpose is to determine how well school districts or particular grade levels are meeting those statewide and district standards. So it's not really like on an individual student level, but more so like everyone together. Types, there's achievement tests, diagnostic tests, and intelligence tests as well. Diagnostic tests being used to identify learning difficulties, especially in reading and writing, and intelligence tests used to indicate a student's potential for learning. I don't believe that we use too many intelligence tests now in the school system. We're more so focusing on those achievement and diagnostic tests. The advantages of these tests: they measure what they claim to measure, and the text so that they're reliable, that a student's score will be consistent. However, later on in the text it talked about how, again, these standardized tests are testing what a student does in that moment in time, and that's affected by things like anxiety, fatigue, attention, maybe they didn't eat well that morning. You know, there are other factors that can affect tests, so I feel like a student's score could still fluctuate depending on what those external factors are. So that leads into the criticism. It fails to adequately inform instruction. It carries linguistic and cultural biases, and again only reflects behavior or ability during a single point in time. And just like we just mentioned, it's influenced by these non-cognitive behaviors like anxiety, fatigue, and attention. It also can encourage teachers to teach to the test to raise their scores, because funding can be affected by these standardized test scores. And the standardized tests that immediately come to my mind are our Maryland standardized test and then also the SAT. The SAT stands for Stanford Achievement Test, and it measures reading comprehension, listening comprehension, language, spelling, math, problem solving, science, and social studies. So how can teachers help prepare students for these standardized tests? We should make sure that our instruction is aligned with our state curriculum standards, and also set goals and use informal assessment to monitor our students' progress. And we can also help them with some test prep strategies as well, such as familiarizing our students with the language and format of these standardized tests, advising students to read test directions carefully, and having students use context clues and analyze the meaning of unknown words for vocabulary they might be unfamiliar with. It's also important for us to talk about the why of these tests to students. So talking with them about what the test purpose is and how the results will be used, that can help students have more of an understanding of why are we even taking this exam and what's its importance. So whereas in standardized assessments, the test plays the main role, with authentic assessment, the teacher plays the main role. So authentic assessments, they evaluate student content knowledge, skills, and processes that take place in naturalistic settings and situations within our classrooms. It's also called an alternative assessment, performance assessment, and informal assessment, and they can be informal or formal. So formal assessments, those are a systematic approach through which teachers assess the overall growth of a student in areas like understanding, problem-solving skills, social skills, etc. And this could be like an end of the unit test, kind of like a summative project, whereas informal is an ongoing continual process, and the scores can be easily read and interpreted, and then there's a lot of examples underneath, such as group projects, presentations, experiments, student-teacher conferences, interviews, portfolios, all that good stuff. And so in addition to these formal and informal assessments, there's also performance assessment, and that is an assessment that directly evaluates a skill that a student has acquired. And it involves a student in constructing different types of products for diverse environments in ways that the student would use it in real-world situations. So skills like dancing or playing music, that can be assessed through just direct observation. And then there's other performance-based assessments like drawing, speaking, debating, those types of activities. So how can we implement an effective classroom-based assessment system? So here are just a couple of suggestions. We can ask ourselves, what do I even need to assess? When, how often, and why? What data sources will I be using? And what counts as learning in my classroom? Those are pretty important questions to ask ourselves. Also, it's important for students to understand that assessment is a daily classroom activity, and it helps you understand how the students are learning. So it puts a little bit of pressure off of the students themselves. We can use assessment systems and data to place students in different groups. And we can focus assessment on important learning goals for each unit, collect data, organize that data and analyze it, and then provide feedback to students and make our own instructional changes as needed. And we can make self-assessment integral to our classroom, because self-assessment, reflection, and metacognition promote these higher order thinking skills and student accountability in their learning process. We can also be intentional. We don't need to grade and collect everything that the students do. That puts a lot of time onto our plate. So instead, decide what is important, be consistent, and utilize multiple different assessment strategies. We can also organize student data in paper or electronic folders so that we can access it easily for student conferences, parent conferences, and just to reflect on how that student is progressing and our own teaching as well. And it is also helpful to schedule periodic conferences with our students to discuss their performance and learning and help them reflect on their own progress as well. So another component of an effective classroom assessment strategy that we can have is having portfolios. I love portfolios personally, being a visual arts teacher, because they're integral to our classroom. But portfolios can be a means of authentic assessment. It's a way for students to collect work over time and help them reflect on their progress. And there's a wide variety of artifacts that can be within these portfolios, such as projects, writing lab reports, videos, test results, teacher notes. There's like a whole gamut of things that can be included in a portfolio. So what are some different kinds of portfolios? There's process portfolios, which shows the journey that the students take on their learning path. There's also composite portfolios that contains more than one student's work, and it could demonstrate what is taught within a program. So for instance, if I had a composite portfolio for like a Foundations of Art class, it might demonstrate different projects that we would cover in that class to be kind of an introduction to parents and students who are interested. There's also short showcase portfolios, and that's when you display the best student progress products over a particular time period. And that can be a whole class portfolio, or it can be an individual's portfolio. And then growth portfolios. So that demonstrates growth in a particular skill over time. So you could have an early, midterm, and later sample of a student's work. And here are some options for different content areas. Again, I'm art, so we would have a lot of photographs of artwork, maybe some artist papers showing the progress from like sketch to final image, all that good stuff. But again, here is some options for your own content area. I personally love online portfolios because they are very easy to access and update. So here are some digital tools for portfolios: WordPress, Google Apps, Dropbox. The Project Foundry and Digication, those are like more new digital tools for portfolios. But yeah, go ahead and check out these different options. And then, let's see, can I scroll? Yes. So assessment and grading. Of course, we need to examine our own biases and assumptions about grading. Grades carry a lot of weight and affect student motivation, graduation, and post-secondary options. So it is a very important thing that we do as teachers. And we should always communicate clear expectations about our grading system to our students. So we should design a classroom-based assessment that reflects our content area goals and standards and reflect on our own instruction. If we want our students to learn content at a deep and critical level, then we have to create assessments that will help them reach those goals. And our chapter text on pages starting at 411, they detail out each content area and then what to assess and then what to do. So that can be very helpful to take a look at. So for our discussion questions, we have assessment, grading, and portfolios. What are your attitudes towards assessment? What types of assessments do you prefer and why? Reflect on your own grading system. Is there anything you'd like to modify, and if so, why? And in what ways may you use portfolio assessments in your classroom? What types of portfolio would you use? And what would some examples of the content be? Thank you.